All right. Thanks again to everyone for attending the first ever National Hybrid Schools Conference. Thanks. So this first session is going to focus on the origin stories of a few different schools. I say all the time that this hybrid school space is all gray area. Your schools and the schools that you know about have a lot of overlap in how they're structured, how they operate, but they also have a lot of unique aspects too. So I'm sorry if you've heard this, but I like to talk about two schools that I visited 5 years ago or so. They're in two different towns, maybe 5 or 10 miles apart from each other. They're both hybrid schools, as I would talk about them, right? The kids go to class for full days, a couple days a week, and then they're at home for the rest of the week. In fact, at the time, I think these two schools had the exact same weekly schedule. Like they were Tuesday, Thursday school, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at home. But one question I get a lot is, okay, if they're going to school, is this really homeschooling at all, right? So I tend to ask this question a lot to schools that I visit. Do you think of yourself as a homeschooler or as a private school student? So I asked this to these two school principals that I met with. And so I said, Principal A, do you think of your families as members of a private school or as homeschoolers? And he said, oh, we are absolutely a private school, right? We run our classes, our kids work at home 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Okay, so I drive down the road a little bit. You can see where this story is headed, right? School B, principal, are you a homeschooler or a private school? And he says, oh, we are absolutely a group of homeschoolers that come together 2 days a week and they just do work at home the rest of the time, right? To complicate it even more, School A they considered all their kids to be members of a private school. School B registered all their kids with the state as homeschoolers. I've told this story to a lawyer who knows a lot about homeschool laws, who might even be in this room right now. And he said one of them is doing it wrong. And I'm very sure he was right. But that's you all know, that's kind of how it works, right? It's all over the place. But I see that as kind of a feature, not a bug, right? That these schools are able to set up their cultures and their operations and their organization how they think is going to work for them the best, right? So I've been doing academic research on these schools for at least 7 years now, and actually working with them for longer than that. I helped start a hybrid high school program where my kids go, and I've taught high school classes at my kids' school off and on as my schedule allows over the past 10 years. The director of teacher training at that school is great. She's also the choir director. She's been much more important to the school than I have been. It turns out she's also my roommate and my wife, right? But she's here, so I'm not going to say that part out loud. Anyway, in my personal experience and in my research, I find that along with the flexibility in operations, these schools are set up for all kinds of reasons. They start up in all kinds of ways. Our audience here is really mixed, right? Some of you started your schools out of religious motivations, some for academic reasons. Some people are just sort of serial entrepreneurs. Some people do it for sports reasons or fine arts reasons. Sometimes these schools start as ministries of churches. Sometimes they start as public school programs. Sometimes they start as just a group of homeschoolers who outgrow their kitchen table. But what you all have in common is the communities you're setting up, right? Your schools and your school experiences are there to support your families and your kids in whatever ways that you need, right? The families who buy into your schools have done so because you're serving some kind of need and you're filling a desire that you and they have for their kids in terms of community, faith, flexibility, and lots of other things. So, the things that your families desire vary a lot, right? So even when two hybrid homeschools have the same mission, they can take on really different forms. So I thought a good way to kick off this whole conference would be to highlight some of the different forms that these schools take. And to do that, we have some founders who are going to talk about how their school started and how they're going now. So who we have on this panel are Julie Wilborn from St. John Bosco Academy in Cumming, Georgia. Julie graduated from the University of Georgia with a degree in accounting and is one of the founding board members of St. John Bosco Academy. She is the director of finance and formation for the school, but her favorite role is high school theology teacher. She and her husband, Ryman, have 7 children and 3 grandchildren. We also have Bo Dollins from Second Baptist Academy in Houston, Texas. Bo is currently serving as the director of University Model Operations at Second Baptist School University Model in Houston, which is a multi-site classical university model school that will have over 750 students in the fall. He co-founded the school 10 years ago with his wife, Pam. In addition to education administration, he spent 18 years in human resource management, including staffing, recruiting, and professional employer organizations, overseeing the human capital management of millions of employees in all 50 states during his career. He has an MBA, a senior professional in human resources designation, and will be concluding his doctoral journey this fall focused on education. In addition to that, his oldest child will graduate from their school in a few weeks, while he and his wife welcome their 11th child, hopefully the week after graduation. And then we have Jennifer Causa from the Julian Charter Schools in Southern California. Jennifer has been the executive director for the JCS family of charter schools in Southern California for the past 22 years. She's taught K-12 at a small rural school in San Diego County for 9 years before transitioning to the charter world. She loves building the dreams of parents, staff, and students to create hybrid programs throughout multiple counties in Southern California. So welcome to our panelists. Thanks. So they're going to each talk about their school's kind of origin and where it is now, and I'll step back. And once they're done, we have a microphone going around if anyone has questions for them. So just, if you have a question at the end, raise your hand and we'll come around with a mic. So let's start with Julie from St. John Bosco. Can you tell us how your school got started, how things are going now? And for full disclosure for the audience, I currently have 5 kids at St. John Bosco, 1 who graduated and 1 who's will show up there soon. All right. So, okay, Julie, go ahead.
Good morning. Yes, so we are one of those hybrid schools that started as a group of tired homeschool moms who outgrew their kitchen tables. We, I have to hold this. Okay, so I would say that my struggle for most of my motherhood was this balance between education and home life, and I didn't see the balance anywhere. I saw, and I told our priest this at one point, I was like, I just want education to be a piece of our life. I don't want it to be our entire lives. I want to have a family life, like separate from education. But it feels like no matter what we do, education is our entire lives. And even homeschooling, I kind of felt like education was still our entire lives because I was a terrible homeschooler and I was dropping balls all over the place and I'm laying awake at night going, not sure that the 3rd grader knows where the state of Georgia is on a map and we live in Georgia, okay? And so things like that plagued me all the time and I didn't ever feel the balance. My sister and 2 friends and I were homeschoolers who I would say loved the fruit of homeschooling. We loved being with our kids, but as our family size grew, the burden of being the end-all be-all for everything and being on the hook for everything, I felt like the resident nag, and I felt like I didn't have any support, and it was kind of competing with that joy of just being with our kids, right? So we came together one year as our oldest kids. At this time, I had 6 kids. Between the 4 families, we had 20 kids, and we came together and just did a co-op kind of around kitchen tables. It really was kitchen tables. My house and my sister's house, fortunately, are in the same neighborhood, so we had the upper campus at my house, lower campus at her house. You laugh, but it totally worked. The neighbors were like, why are there always cars in the cul-de-sac? And we were just like, it's so good. The weird homeschoolers are getting a little weirder. And after that first year, things went so well, and we loved the order to it all that we just had families joining us, and my husband was looking at us going, it's time for you to get out of our house, for sure. I had actually visited another hybrid before that kind of inspired all of this because it was the hybrid idea, what was this, 12 years ago? This is in 2008, 2009, so it's 14 years ago. I'm behind a little bit. The hybrid idea to me was a very foreign concept, but when a friend mentioned, hey, you should go visit Fidelis Christian School, it's a blend, it sounds like that's kind of more the balance you're looking for. I was super intrigued and I went and visited, and I will never forget, that was a big moment for me. It was kind of a pinnacle God moment for me because the The founder of Fidelis, who toured me around, said, I've been the principal of a public school, I've been the principal of a private school, I have homeschooled my 5 kids, and then I've done this hybrid thing. And of all the different education institutions I've been a part of, far and away this is better because it's the only one where parents are supported, but they remain the primary sphere of influence throughout the child's life. And I was like, bingo, that's it. That's what I want. I want support, but I want to remain the primary sphere of influence. I want the family to be the vital hub, the vital cell, because that's what we're supposed to be. So I went home and I told my husband, and he was like, awesome, are you going to put the kids in? And I was like, no, because it's not Catholic, and the whole reason we did this is to give our kids the faith. We got to start one. And he was like, oh, I'm so excited about this. Great. But that was really where the inspiration was born. And I will say that we started, by the grace of God, we were able to rent space the following year after knocking on many, many doors, looking for space inside of churches that kind of sit empty during the week. We found a place inside a church/school that had high attrition, and we were able to rent that second year. So this was 2009, and now it is 2022. We started that first fall with 56 students. And now we just completed our second building on our 4-acre campus in Cumming, Georgia, and we have well over 500 students. So there's a great demand. There's a great demand. We operate just like, I would say, what Eric said about the whole, are we a private school or are we a homeschool? Yes, we are. Yes. The answer to that is yes. In the high school, we are 3 days a week on site in the high school because the demands of high school are obviously much greater, and it is accredited. Pre-K or K through 12, we are accredited, but the high school is actually has a high school private school status. So our high schoolers are not homeschoolers, but the rest of our school is homeschoolers. So we do have that balance of it ramps up as it's supposed to in the high school. The lower school, we have 2 sessions, a Monday, Wednesday, and a Tuesday, Thursday. We began with the Tuesday, Thursday session, and as that filled up, we began the Monday, Wednesday session, and that blend is what affords us the ability to pay for our own building. So I will get into that more at the next panel, but I'm gonna hand over the microphone to Eric. Who do you want to go next?
We planned this out, I promise. No, so I'll kind of give my story. First, it goes way back. My wife and I met in Sunday school when we were 5 years old. So we don't have to go all the way back there, but it is somewhat material to the story. I grew up homeschooling through 5th grade in the 80s when you had to kind of, are you lying when you tell someone, why are you out? Because you might be a truant and need to go to jail, or your parents do. And so, at least in Texas. And so we grew up homeschooling, and then as I went through kind of middle school and high school, I went to a private Christian school, Second Baptist High School in Houston, Texas, which is where our school is today. It's part of the story. And my wife, on the other hand, went to public school through 4th grade and then homeschooled the rest of the way. So we kind of have all ends of the spectrum, public, private, and all of those things influenced our life. And as we started having kiddos, high school sweethearts got married. I'm going to skip that part. But, got married and had our first kiddo a couple years into marriage. And as she became school age, we really were torn because we wanted time with our child. She wasn't ready to give her up 5 days a week. But at the same time, we wanted a great education. We knew there were pluses and minuses. Those are things we experienced to homeschooling. There were some pluses to it, some opportunity, real formation. But at the same time, there were some negatives or some things that we found that were exciting and fun and fulfilling about a great private school experience. So all that to say that as we started blending that together, we said, man, I just wish there was something that would kind of do it all. And so a friend of ours said, hey, I'm thinking of starting kind of this university model school. We're like, great, we know university model schools because we paid attention, and there really wasn't very many in Houston. There was a couple. They were not close. And so they started, and so we helped them. We were the first 7 families there. And a couple years into that, they experienced a massive amount of growth. And then with that, they said, hey, we're probably not going to be a real university model school anymore. And what that means is, are they still doing classes? Yes, a couple days a week. Yes. Did they ever add a 3rd day? No. Were they going to do sports and community? They would classify themselves back to Eric's initial point. They would say we're homeschoolers. right? 100% we're homeschoolers that are doing class. But that wasn't what our family wanted, because I got an immense amount out of my co-curriculars, athletics, arts, and those things, and the other teachers pouring into me in a private Christian high school environment. So there was this balance. There was like this tension, right? Because we're going, well, we thought we were going to get everything, but we're just not. Can we live with that? And so, frankly, God put it on our hearts, that started kind of, maybe we should do this. And we were like, no, that's crazy. We're not going to do that. We're not going to start a school. No, 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 no. And then people started coming and telling us, hey, we really think you should start a school. And we said, my wife goes, hey, God's kind of talking to me. Literally, a lady drove to our house from like an hour away. And it's like, God told me to drive here today to tell you to start a school. And I'm like, honey, the great news is he hadn't told me. And she said, I'm so glad. I'm going to be a submissive wife and just let you lead. She is wonderful, a wonderful woman. Obviously, having 10 and now 11 children, just to begin to say that. But then, actually, I forgot about this until yesterday. 10 years ago yesterday, I was in a group prior to education, because I shouldn't be in education. I was in kind of a CEO roundtable, and they had brought a coach in. And everybody, this group of CEOs knew me well. And we'd been together probably, at that point, 4 years, meeting at least monthly. And they said, go around, this facilitator says, go around and tell everybody what they need to know, but they don't want to admit. And so every one of them looked at me and said, hey, your business, you're kind of bored by it. We really think you need a new challenge. And it really should be something to do with your family. Have you ever thought maybe like a school? And these people don't share my faith. They don't really know me outside of this group. And so I'm like, Lord, you're using people that have no idea. And at that point, we were normal. We only had 3 kids, okay? I mean, they had no idea that we were going to have a zillion kids, and we didn't either, frankly. And so I went home, and it was just like this moment. And I said, yesterday, it was like I realized it was 10 years ago yesterday. And we're here talking about this. I mean, it's crazy. So I go home and tell my wife, hey, honey, I got something to tell you. God told me we're supposed to open a school. And she just kind of she kind of looked down and she goes, I know, I'm so excited you finally got on board. But then what do? You Google how to start a private school. So we Google it, and it says 1.5 to 2 years ahead of the time that you want to open the door, you need to go find a lawyer and an accountant, all these people to be on your board and suck free work out of them. And so we're like, I don't have time for that. But I have lawyers, I have accountants, I have these people that owe me favors because I write them checks, and so they should help me. So within 2 weeks, we went from yes to here's our website, here's our name, here's our logo, and launch. We didn't have a building, keep that in mind, but people started signing up. We were doing info sessions in our home, right, in our living room. And we're like, trust us, it's all going to work out. I saw a guy walking with sheetrock into a building that looked like it was abandoned. And so I pulled over, I said, hey, are y'all renovating this building? They're like, yeah. I was like, can I rent it? And they're like, I don't know, go talk to that lady. So I know it's shocking, the sheetrock carrier was not the owner. So I went in there, and she's like, yeah, we're actually doing a music school here, and we'd love to, it's only the nights and weekends, we'd love maybe for somebody to rent it. So we did. They overcharged us, we paid it was great. And so we opened our first year, we had 12 families and 27 kids, right? And we grew. The next year, we grew about 15 to 20% a year, every year over year. And our calling was always to be focused on the depth. We wanted to do an excellent job, right? We wanted to be exactingly clear about who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because here's the reality. If you don't know where you're going, you will end up somewhere. And it may be great, but it may not be where you meant to go. Mm-hmm. And so because we were able to clearly articulate who we were, where we were going, and why we were going there, people jumped on to this insanity. Right? So we grew 15, 20% a year. We were not advertising. We weren't doing any of the things you're supposed to do when you Google how to grow a school. But people kept showing up, and they were a great community. And if you ask our kids, again, the school we left was probably 10 minutes from us. If you go in there right now and ask those people, are you a homeschooler or a private school? They will say, I'm a homeschooler. You go ask any of our kids. You go ask the students. You go ask the parents. What are we? We're a private school. That's what they're going to say, 100%. right? They just are. And so as we grew that school, God was over that. People were over that. We went through some, crazy stories. We've all got them. If you've started a school, it's nothing that makes any sense on paper that you should do. I still go, I don't understand it. But we were super excited. So in the fall of 2020, right, we went under contract, purchased our own building. That's a big deal, guys. We were thinking, hey, we're rounding third base. We got kids in high school about to start our first graduates, and we're going to get our own dirt, our own building. That's going to solidify the legacy of this school, and it's going to really set it up for decades of success. And then, a month after we closed, the senior pastor of Second Baptist Church, which has 86,000 members across 6 campuses, and has a 75-year-old private Christian traditional pedagogy school, 5 days a week, 1,000+ kids. I graduated from there, right? Comes to us and says, hey, we know what you've done. We are excited about what it is, and that's the educational model we want to use to expand Christian education across Houston at all of our other campuses. We know what this 5-day is, and we know what it produces, and it's great, but we want more intentional relationships with families, and a hybrid school, a university model school does that. And so consequently, in a very short amount of time, we went from a few hundred kids to 750 kids next year in less than a year. And the year after that, we will grow another 100% on top of that. So in fall 23, we'll open 2 more campuses. We did 2 this year, 2 more this year. We'll do 2 more next year, and we'll be at 1,500 kids. And each one of those campuses is likely to be 1,000+ kids. And we're running 2 tracks, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. And all of that to say, I have no idea 10 years ago, if you had said this was going to happen, I said, you are crazy. Did I ever think I was going to get another degree at all, much less if I thought about it? I was like, well, man, business, it makes sense. And education, no. I thank Eric for his work. I've used an immense amount of it in my dissertation. I know his bibliography well. Thank you for doing something I could put in the paper about university model schools and hybrid schools. So that's a quick bit of our story, but it is interlaced with a calling. This is not something for the faint of heart. Yes. Right? If you're not committed to it, your parents won't be, right? And I will tell you just as a profile of our parents, I would say 80+% of our parents would never homeschool. It would freak them out. We are the thing that but they have this urging, this calling, this something that says, I want to be more involved in my kids' education. Our job is to come alongside them and help facilitate their calling, right? To support them, to hold them accountable, right? At the same time, provide that infrastructure that feels like they can be successful. So I probably should have talked more about all the pain, but there was a lot, but you can just see the fruit of it, that now thousands of kids, thousands of people involved in families will get the opportunity to spend time with their kiddos. So I would just be, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that all of you all are here, and I'm excited to see what is going to continue to happen with an alternative education reality that doesn't say I have to go sit in this one building 5 days a week and spend 17,000 hours away from my parents, K through 12. So.
And I would just say, I would piggyback on that. Thank you so much. That is exactly what is part and parcel of our success, is being very committed to a vision that we are very clear about up front. As part of our admissions process, parents have to come to an open house and listen to us talk about how this is why we're here. Even if we could be 5 days, if someone gave us a $10 million endowment, we wouldn't be, because what we value about this model is your time with your child. That's what transforms this whole culture. That is what makes this work. And when people hear you very confidently leap out there, they will follow. I agree completely. 80% of our parents would never homeschool, and they walk in the door saying that. I think homeschoolers are weird. I can't homeschool. I'm not going to do it. But if you lead, they will follow. If you give them a community to jump into, they will absolutely jump on board.
Very good. I don't know. This one's still on. Well, you haven't heard the word law yet, and so I am a public school, and you will hear the word law probably quite a few times through my experience as far as starting a charter school in San Diego, California, is where we originally started. So the story starts with a superintendent of Julian Charter School, or Julian Union School District, which is a small rural school in San Diego County. And he goes into the local coffee shop for a cup of coffee. And one of his students is in there, and he thinks he's truant. And so he talks to the student, and the student says, "Oh, no, I'm enrolled in a school up in Northern California." And the principal, or the superintendent, just kind of looked and went, "How are you enrolled in a school in Northern California?" And he goes, "It's a charter school." And the superintendent went, "What's a charter school?" And so he went back to his office and he got on the internet and he started investigating. And you have to remember, this is 1999 when the internet was still new. I keep, remembering that it seems so foreign, to think that it was barely around, but you could research and try and find out some things. So he found out the name of the school. He called the school. How in the world is that happening? How can he be up there? And that happened to be when in California a law was going through called AB 1994. And the law was basically to take schools who were doing distance-based learning and education and make it that you could only be authorized by a school district, and you could enroll students within that county or the contiguous counties. And so when this superintendent called the originator of the charter school, it was a management company that had 3 schools in Northern California, they were so thrilled because they knew that they were going to need to break up the school and start multiple schools up and down the state. So they ended up breaking up the 3 schools and made 7 additional schools up and down the state. And I was working at a small rural school in the backcountry about 30 minutes away from the town of Julian, and I live a mile from the town of Julian. So I get a phone call one day, and it's the management company, and they said, "How would you like to apply for a position of program director and a charter school?" And I went, "What's a charter school?" Because I had never heard of it as a public educator. And so I got online and I looked it up. And it was about individualized learning. And I went, "Oh, that's exactly what I do. We have individual spelling lists. I do 5 math groups. I have reading on the couch, and I do individual books on the, that's my calling." And so I said, "Yes, I want to interview for this." And so I went up to Julian and interviewed, and then they flew me to the corporate office up in Sacramento, and I was like, "Whoa, this is bigger than what I know." So I went up to Sacramento and I interviewed, and I was hired for the position, and I ended up starting in December of that year. And as a public school teacher, you probably know about unions. Our school was non-union, so I left without breaking a contract, which was very important to me. I was very concerned about the children. It was very interesting because I had just jumped from my high school position down to kindergarten that year. It was a small rural school, so you could kind of go back and forth. So I actually have taught K-12, and I was in kindergarten, and I had 16 students. And so I talked to each of the parents, and the parents all said, "Go, go. This is kindergarten. These guys will be fine." And we actually took one of the teachers that was at the school that came in, so we had some overlap time with those students before I left. And I went up to Julian, and we didn't have a building yet. There was supposed to be an office. The district was working on putting a facility on the campus. And I found out that the school had about 300 students enrolled in it at the time, just because geographically they had taken the San Diego, Orange, Imperial, and Riverside County students that were enrolled in their Northern California schools. So I came in and I sat down at the desk, and I was alone in the office. I don't think the desk got there until January, so I was home with my children. I got to go to their awards things. It was the first time I had flexibility in my life as an educator, so that was quite fun and eye-opening. And I started and I went out, and there were no facilities in the school, and we had 300 kids, and we had I don't know how many teachers. And so I would go out and I would go to these teachers' meetings, and we would meet. And then one day I was sitting in the office, and I actually knew every student by their paperwork, because in California we have to produce paperwork, lots and lots of paperwork in independent study. So I would be reading their independent study assignments, and there were some vagueness in them, and I was concerned because, it had said English 2, the Bible and Cosmopolitan magazine, and I went, okay, that is not an English 2 class. I think we need WASC accreditation. So we started making some changes in rules and building the curriculum and doing all of that. And then one day, one of my teachers had said, I really want to get my students together. I don't like that they're out. I want to bring them in. And I think it was a government and an economics class or something. It was high school. So I said, I like that idea. Let's do it. And so we were looking for a place, and one of our teachers goes, I have a barn. And so we said, okay, we'll start in a barn. So we bought the tables and the chairs and the overhead projector and a screen, and there we go. 2 days a week, they were meeting at the barn. And it was so wildly successful that she goes, can we do something bigger? And I said, yes, I love it, let's do it. So then we decided, we went to a church and we asked if they had space, so very similar, and they had space, and so we started this learning center at the church, and it grew outrageously, over a year or two. And so then it was time to get our own facility, so very similar. And so we went and leased a facility, did the tenant improvements, and had a real site-based learning center for the students. And then California changed the law again. And now they said you have to have more students in the county in which you're authorized than in your adjacent counties. So this happened to be in Temecula, which is in our Riverside County, and Julian is in San Diego County. So we had 1,000 students in Riverside County and 400 in San Diego. So we had a conversation as a community and a board, and we said, do we split? Do we create, a Riverside school and a San Diego school so that we can do this? And they all said, no, we want to be one. And so I said, well, that means we have to grow San Diego by 601 students. And so we said, we put learning centers over here, and it grew massively to 1,000. I wonder if we put learning centers over here, if it'll grow. And that's what we did. So we put 5 learning centers in 5 geographical areas that we had a lot of students in, but we were kind of north, mid, south, and then kind of far east San Diego County. And we called them learning centers, and we started our program, and we grew to 2,600 students, probably by, 2014, 15? And so we were at that point, and as far as the learning centers go, we did 1 day a week. We were doing 2 days a week. We were doing all kinds of different things, and then one day, one of my board members said, I need you to start, a high school program. And at this time, our learning centers were a lot of enrichment and a lot of math and a lot of science labs and those types of things. So kind of a la carte how to help and support a parent. But my board member said, I want you to do the planning when my girls get to high school. You tell me what I'm supposed to do. I want it basically to be a collegiate model. You take care of it and just let me make sure their home study gets done on home study days. That's the other thing. We are not allowed to use the word homeschool in a public school, so we call it home study. And so we started what we call an academy program. So you were academy program, your student was coming to this classroom, and we were in charge of everything and doing everything. And if you were a home studies student, we worked very closely with the parents to do the parents' vision and plan, but make sure that it aligned with what California expected us to do as a public charter school. So that was wildly successful. And then we started noticing more parents who were disenchanted with 5-day-a-week traditional public schools coming to us saying, please help us, please help us. We don't want to do this. And I said, well, I can't be 5 days a week. I'm an independent study charter school, which in California they call non-classroom based. So it's really difficult because we have classrooms. And so we try to get rid of that terminology, and California has wrestled with it, trying to figure out what it is. Hybrid works, but they haven't picked that up yet. And so it's still non-classroom based and classroom based, which is how they take attendance. So that's basically the difference. But we have stayed non-classroom based or independent study this entire time. And the definition in California of independent study is less than 80% of the time is spent in the classroom. And so we said, well, if we start 4-day-a-week programs, that's, 80%. And if we take some extra time off, like around Thanksgiving or around certain holidays, we can make it less than 80%. We can do this. And so those parents would probably say they're in a traditional school because it was a traditional mindset group of parents. And our home study families would probably say that they were homeschoolers, so we're a tweener. Anyway, so from that point, we grew, and then the laws changed again. And this time, a local school district, we were in Alpine, which is a small rural school. We had 40 students there. I mean, I don't get it. But Alpine was challenged by Grossmont Unified School District that we could not have a resource center in their territory because we were authorized out of Julian, which is a small backcountry school. And we said, this is not a school that is here. This is a resource center where these kids come in and they get some direct instruction from a credentialed teacher. They meet with their teacher, they get their books, they get their materials, they get their special ed services. This is a resource center. Well, I can't say you can't make a school with 40 students because you guys have, several of you have, but it's difficult to run a school, I would think, on 40 students. And so basically, from that point, we were in a lawsuit. And we were in a lawsuit with Grossmont, and then San Diego Unified decided to join on, and that was challenging our resource centers in San Diego. And so we're sitting there, but I guess I should say, thankfully, Northern California had a challenge with the same attorneys, so that's kind of interesting. But it was called Anderson versus Shasta, and so Anderson County, I believe, was challenging Shasta Charter School for the same thing, that they had a resource center in their territory, and it wasn't their authorizing district. And so that case happened to run faster through the courts than our case, and it was settled before our case, and it was settled that those resource centers are really schools. So you either need to close your resource centers because they're not authorized per charter law, or you need to turn them into a school. And so we had another big choice, and this was in 2016. And our judge basically said, okay, it's been decided up north. We're going to say that's the way it is down here. And then, of course, the whole state of California started moving in that direction. And so, again, we talked and we said, what are we going to do? Are we going to close? Because a school of 40 is not going to make it. And the way it works is because we're working all together, and, you know, it's economies of scale that make this work. And our communities were passionate, and that's what it takes to do any of this work, is the passionate community. And they all said, no, we want to turn into a school. And so we wrote 5 charters, and well, my original vision was only 2, because, you know, I'm simple. And so we were going to do well, I guess originally we did go to districts. So San Diego County office, I wanted a countywide benefit charter in San Diego because I had 5 or 6, 7 maybe facilities in San Diego County, which is, you know, a countywide benefit, right? We're all over the county. And the county said, have you asked the authorizers of the districts you're in? And I said, no, but it makes sense to me to have countywide and do one. And they said, no, you have to go back and ask each of the districts. And so I went, okay, that's going to be the way this is going to work. So I had to ask, you know, Mountain Empire, if that one could be there. I had to ask Grossmont, the one that just sued me, if I could be there. I had to ask La Mesa Spring Valley if I could be there. I had to ask San Diego, the one that just sued me, if I could be there. And then I have 2 in Encinitas, which are basic aid districts. So that's going to cost them money, because the way basic aid works is basically if they authorize a charter, they have to take their funds and pay the charter school. And if they deny you, you go to the County Office of Education, but that means they have to pay the County Office of Education. So I knew that that one was going to be a challenge. And then our other 2 resource centers were in the Temecula-Marietta area, so I was going to have to petition with Temecula and petition with Marietta in order to keep both of those charter schools going. So our team, and this was a team effort, worked very diligently to get all of these charters written, to work with each of these authorizers to explain why we're doing it, what's behind it. We've been in existence for, what was it, 15 years at that particular point in time, and that this is why we're doing it. And by the grace of God, it happened. And so we went to Temecula, and they basically said, we're not going to authorize you, go to the county office. And I think at the time it was kind of known or thought of that the county office would not authorize us. Well, lo and behold, the county office authorized us and gave us a countywide benefit charter. So I didn't have to petition with Marietta, and I was like, thank you. We have one school. So that was my vision in San Diego. It didn't work out in San Diego. Mountain Empire authorized the one in the Far East. We had to close Alpine because I wouldn't even ask Grossmont. And we figured Alpine could go up to Pine Valley. We went, or to La Mesa, which is about 15 minutes up or 15 minutes down, and it's not a busy highway, so we figured that would be okay. La Mesa, Spring Valley denied us, and so we had to petition again at the San Diego County Office of Education. You can do an appeal, and they accepted us on like the last day you can open a charter school. So on, what was it, August 28th or September 28th, something like that, that school opened. So we were grateful for that. We're in the middle of San Diego County. And then the way we worked out the two buildings that are in Encinitas is an odd twist to charter law in California, where you can have one facility outside of your sponsoring district's boundary lines with the permission of the district you're in. So I went to Encinitas and San Diego. It's an elementary district and a 712 district, and I asked for permission to be there, and they said yes. And the reason that's so important is in 2015, we went and purchased facilities. So now we have a bond on top of all of it. So I'm doing all of this work trying to save all of these schools because the corporation now has a bond, a $26 million bond for 4 of these facilities. And gracefully, Encinitas and San Diego were willing to work with us and gave us the letter of support, which allowed Julian Union to be able to authorize 2 out-of-county, out of district, but in-county charter schools. So we now are 6 charter schools across the same territory, and we do 6 LCAPs, and we do 6 budgets, and we do 6 board meetings, and we do 6 plans, and it is exhausting. It is the craziest format, but I have a group of colleagues who are all dealing with it with me, and so they're here too. And so grateful that California, the strong California people could get together and make this happen for kids and families. And so that's where we are today. And we're 4 years into our 5-year renewal, our 5-year charters. The state, because of COVID, extended everybody for 2 more years. So we have 3 years in front of us. And we need to, rewrite the charters and continue the relationships with the board to get renewed as we move forward. So it's been a nice challenge and a long journey, and we're still here, so that's good.
All right, do we have questions for these panelists? Raise your hand and we'll send the microphone. Oh, good, perfect, on the other side of the room.
Run, run! Oh.
Where was the question?
This is for Jennifer. I run a very tiny micro school, hybrid homeschool, whatever you want to call it, here in this area. Very, very tiny, privately funded, tuition-based. What you're talking about is like another language to me.
I know.
In terms of funding, this is my question. Do all of the students who go to your schools, are they all funded by the state of California?
Yes. Yes. So we have to follow all of the immunization laws.
Yes.
We have to follow all of the laws that are in California for public schools.
Is there such a thing as what I do in California?
They have started. So basically what is happening during the pandemic, a lot of parents were frustrated with traditional public schools that could not serve their kids. And so they started what you are calling a micro school. They kind of were calling them pods in San Diego, or at least that's the word I heard a lot. And you would see on the homeschool Facebook groups that they were trying to get pods of families and kids together to start their own. And so I don't know if they were paying for it themselves or how they were creating it, but we could tell that that's where a lot of the students were going. What just makes me so proud, and I guess it's all of this work and being a 21st century school, COVID shut us down on March 13th, and on Monday morning, everybody was online because we had all the technology, we had all the systems. We had symptoms. COVID brain. No. Anyway, we had everything in place. Special ed, we did, transfer of placement in special ed that first week, got services to our kids. And as it went on, we're hearing our district hasn't even called us. We haven't even heard from and I'm like, how can that be? And I think it's because they're just so big and maybe old mindset. They couldn't transition, and they're union, so, you had that issue too. They couldn't transition at all. I mean, really, they did nothing. From March to June, we did it all, and did our MAP test our internal assessment on top of it, because again, we have to be under the accountability model, and we have to show growth, and we have to show participation rates and stuff. California did cut the CASP test, or the state testing for that year. And then the next year, in 2021, we were kind of half and half. So we opened, again, before almost any traditional school and traditional district, and I think a lot of charters did this. We were back on campus with track A and track B, making sure that they were 6 feet apart, masks were on for our site-based students, and we were moving through and going fine as we went through. And then the state offered the CASP assessment at the end of the year. And again, we had the highest percentage rate, 98% of our students, which is really pretty amazing. 98% of them taking the test in the fall, or in the spring of 2021. So
thank you
it's
so
been
much
great.
for what you're doing, even though I don't identify at all. I'm so
You're doing great work too, just on a smaller
it's
scale.
tiny. Yeah, thank you. And it's very encouraging, everything you said.
Thank you all for your presentations. This is sort of a broad policy question. As I've been sitting here listening to this, it's occurred to me that the school choice movement, if you put this in a sports analogy, the school choice movement sort of started as an offensive move to get away from the traditional public school system. And now it seems like all of school choice movements are defensive against what the traditional system is doing. Do any of you have thoughts about that, on what might be done?
So I would say the opposite. If as far as we're concerned, we didn't set up ourselves in opposition to anything. We set ourselves up with an ideal that we found was not being met. And honestly, I did the same thing. Like, Lord, you need to send someone to start a school. Like, you need to send someone to fix this problem. It's a problem. I have all these friends who are suffering the same thing, and we need a good answer, and there just isn't one. And so ours was really filling a need that we saw not being filled anywhere else. So we met it for our own families, and we just put our heads down, and honestly, I didn't care what anybody else was doing. We had this ideal that was obviously placed on our hearts as an inspiration by the Holy Spirit that we saw very, very clearly needed to be done. We knew it worked because it was working so well. We had the benefit of visiting the King's Academy here, really close by here, and Christy Brandon and her team were amazingly generous with us and walking us through troubleshooting areas, but we were not in any way, I wasn't really even that aware of what was going on in public education or private, to be honest with you. I just knew I didn't want it because I saw how much it was sucking the life out of families, and I didn't want that for my family. And I also saw, when I went to Chamblee High School, right, locally here, and we had less time, less money, less investment by everybody, and we were better educated. And I couldn't see, for all this increased fuss and money and resource and time suck, we're not smarter. Our kids are not smarter for that. And that was another thing that troubled me. With all this investment, where is the product, right? And so I knew there was a way that we could do more with less, and that was what I was interested in. And we really, as a team, we put our heads down and went to work and we still don't really notice what anyone else is doing. We're just doing our thing.
Yeah, I'm going to take your question or your opportunity to comment and position it like this. And there's two different ways that you can sell whatever your version is, right? And this is about, again, knowing who you are and what you're about and why you're doing it. You can sell against, there's a sales philosophy, right? Like, I can sell against something. I'm gonna stand up and say all of these things that are bad about everything in the world, right? You pick, I can do it. You grab the thing that lands with you, right? I never have to tell you what I am. You grab one of the things I say and you go, yes, amen, I'm there. Yes, that's terrible. And then you fill in the void of what I am as the antithesis of the thing you dislike. You will grow your school quickly. It will be a dumpster on fire because you have a bunch of disparate people who all grabbed a hold of completely different things and didn't buy who you are and what you do. And if you try and serve all those people, that will work for a while. And if you're disparate enough and don't interconnect those people in any community, and you're giving them just some version of something, and that's what you do, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. You can end up in an amazing place. But the alternative view that you have to decide is, I'm going to be exactingly clear about all those things. And we don't even talk about other schools. In fact, when we get asked about other schools, public, private, 5-day, whatever, homeschooling, we exhort those. We don't say they're bad. We're like, hey, this is us. You need to go to that school or that thing and check it out, right? And see what is a fit for you and your family and your authority over your family and your child. Right? And so there's just two different thoughts of the way that you approach some of that, and even the way you position your school and the way that you sell your school. Are you selling your school, or are you selling against everything else and allowing people to fill in their void? Because that's the way people process sales. Right? If we go back to any commercial context, right? I could just talk bad about a car, right? And you go, that car's bad. Well, I won't buy that one. I guess I'll buy yours. But when the things get hard, are they going to stay committed to that? Do they make a commitment choice for yours? Because at some point, you will mess up, right? Your school will not be perfect, right? Something hard will go on in their life that makes this alternative educational model a challenge. And it's just hard work. And so all of that goes into it. And so do they buy, and are they committed to you? Not you, but what you do. Or are they just there because you're not that?
Yeah, the only thing I would say, again, in California, and it's the laws are coming down. The state, after COVID, had mandated that all traditional public schools offer independent study as a choice for their students. And so the public schools are starting to kind of mimic this school choice option for families, which I think is a win because, this is a model that's obviously working. I believe it's the way education should be and the model for the future. And so traditional public school districts are being mandated to do it right now. And so are we on the offensive or defensive? I would say there's a little defensive because I am wondering if they are going to take away charters or take away choice for parents by saying that districts can do it now. And a lot of people who come to us, a lot of families, they don't want the district. I think they would do anything but the district. And that concerns me because if they don't have another public school choice to go to, what will they do? Probably create a micro school, maybe homeschool, maybe private school, or just unschool, just not go anywhere. So I think there's still, a valid need for a public charter school option in California. We'll see what goes on in the legislature over the next few years.
Okay, that's a good, yes. We have one more question, okay.
So this is an organizational development question and something I want to ask everyone. These kinds of opportunities, institutions, communities, they run on enthusiasm and purpose, all right? And so it's a question of how one continues that post-founders, right? So a lot of, I'm in the software business, right? I've started a lot of companies. I'm a startup guy, right? When it gets to a certain size, it starts to bore me. And so I go to another startup, right? And I've seen this in a lot of hybrid schools that get started. And so there has to be change or new growth that happens. My question is, how do you address that organizationally in your own institutions? And then how would you suggest that other people in this room do the same?
I'll go first because you are me and I am you. I love the build. I'm super excited about the build. I don't know how many companies I've started and don't, still own and don't work at because I'm excited, but they still operate and they better do their job. The reality of it for me is it's about people and process. And in our world, a faith-based environment, it's even more, I get to grab a hold of something even stronger than people and process, which is faith, right? And so, but mooring and aligning those people, and again, being explicitly clear, this is who we are and what our purpose is, that allows them to then ingrain that core values, that mission, vision, philosophy, education, what you're doing, why you're doing it, into what they're doing in their decision making, so that when I step back, they keep doing their job, right? Now, there's a whole, we could have days and days on boards and all their fun that they are, but you've got to find people, and I'll conclude with this, that are an engender in people that are committed and as or more committed than you are, right? They may not have, that may freak them out to start something, but can you grab them and go, and they see it once it's there. Most people don't have vision. It's very hard for people to see it. But once it's there, they can grab a hold of it, they can own it. But you got to find those people, nurture them, grow them, make them leaders, both on staff and in your community. And that would be the way I would encourage the longevity, because I'm a long game guy. I love the build, but what am I doing 30? But I'm thinking 30 years out.
I would pretty much just reiterate what he has said so beautifully. This whole business model of, in any business, because I've just got a business mind, in any business, I've never understood this concept of hire from without and bring somebody brand new in. That to me seems like a disaster, because in order for the culture to be experienced and handed on, it's longevity, it's time, it's winning that heart to the mission. It's really something that happens over time. It's not an overnight thing, and it's not necessarily just innate leadership skills that make somebody take over a business well. So our succession plan, honestly, is we do more of the same of what we do with our parents. We enunciate and highlight and are zealous and on fire about what we love and who we are and why we're doing it, because we're excited about it. And that inevitably brings the people who are also excited about it. And it's like you said, they may not be able to articulate it, but when they hear you say it, bam, something magical happens and they want to be on board. And we can't go find those people. Early on, we were like, we need a this, we need a this. No, that person would present themselves, himself or herself, to us in the right time by their being excited about that spot, that position, our mission. It wasn't anything we could go beat the bushes and hire. Running ads has not given us the most amazing personnel in the world. It's by being who we are and doing what we're doing, word of mouth within the community, people who are in love with what you're doing, get excited about it, and really you can train anybody to do anything within reason once they're excited about what you're doing and really on board with it.
Basically the same here. I'm getting ready for retirement, so I've been working on succession planning for a couple of years, and I have probably 3 years in front of me, and we have 6 principals now. It's one of the benefits, right? And we have a leadership team and organization that's been keeping this going. The hard part is a lot of them are about the same age as me. So we need to start looking a little bit lower and getting some new people in who are ready to learn and come up. But that's exactly what we're working on too.